Hello, psychology students. This is Mr. Everton, and this is a new module all about therapy. Our last module was about mental illness and a variety of ways that people could become mentally ill and what that looks like. This module will be about what do we do for people who suffer from mental illness. And this specific video will be talking about sort of the history of mental health and how we've tried in the past to help people who are mentally unwell. This is a drawing of a particularly infamous asylum or mental hospital from London in the 1800s called Bethlehem Royal Hospital. Um, this hospital, the conditions were horrible. It was incredibly filthy. People were treated not at all well. People and you can see here in the middle, I'm sorry, I'm like inarticulate here. You can see in the middle, there's a couple of upper class ladies wearing fancy clothes who have come in. They've actually paid money to come tour the place so they can sort of like ogle at the freaks, which is appalling. This is not something that would ever happen in a mental hospital today, but that tells you something about the way that traditionally Western society has thought about mental illness, that there's something wrong with these people and they need to be separated from the rest of society, and they can, they're entertaining, like, whoa, God, can you believe that? Like that kind of thing. So there's a couple of really outdated medical procedures I want to talk about here that used to be, and to some extent still are, part of the way that our society treats mental illness. A biomedical treatment of mental illness is focusing on biological causes. It's focusing on what's going on physically with the body. One such treatment is called a prefrontal lobotomy. And the idea here is it's a form of surgery. Psychosurgery is a whole category of medical procedures that can be done to treat somebody with mental illness. Prefrontal lobotomy is where you go in frequently through the eye socket and remove or sever a part of the prefrontal cortex. So you're actually removing or cutting off a part of the brain. The prefrontal cortex, remember, is the part of the brain that regulates emotions and makes judgments and is responsible for a lot of our higher level thinking. And so this was an effective treatment for people who were suffering from extreme depression or extreme schizophrenia or exhibiting violent behavior, but it has incredibly severe side effects where you're basically just like completely changing a person's personality, which means that now prefrontal lobotomies are extremely rare, almost like non-existent. A procedure that still exists, that is still done, is called electroconvulsive therapy. Sometimes people call this shock treatment. It's better if we call it ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. And this is where a patient receives shocks. An electrical current is put across the front of their brain, and it basically induces a seizure, a controlled seizure. And there's safeguards put in place to make sure the person won't be hurt during the seizure. And this is actually proven to be an effective treatment for symptoms of mania and for severe depression. Like if somebody is incredibly depressed and they are not responding well to any other treatment, this is still done. I mean, it's not done with like a lot of regularity. It's pretty extreme. But if somebody is not responding to treatment for severe depression and they're a danger to themselves, usually people who are mentally ill are much more of a danger to themselves than they are to anyone else, electroconvulsive therapy is still used. It does have side effects. Like it can affect your memory. It can cause you to have severe memory loss. So it's not something to be done lightly. So this is a video. This is from a film called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but it just gives you a sense of what ECT looks like.
Take the cigarette break, boys. please? Sure. Love to. Oh, boy. There might be a little fluid in them boots, you know what I mean, boys? Just a little leak. Light shine, boys, and send the specimen to Nurse Ratchet.
All right, out with your gum. Out with your gum.
Okay, this won't hurt. It'll be over in just a moment. Uh-huh. What's that?
Conductant.
Oh, dabble, do ya? Right, Mr. Jackson.
Open your mouth.
What's that?
So keep you from biting your tongue.
Well,
Now just bite down on it. That's right. Just bite down.
huh?
Now bite down on it.
Are you ready? Here we go.
Okay, well, I know that's kind of hard to watch. I do want to stress that, this is a film representing ECT from like the 1940s and 1950s. It also gave you a sense of what a mental hospital might have looked like back then. It also gives you a sense of how unpleasant it is, for sure. So if we were in class, we would do a think, pair, share right now. But we're not in class. But pretend for a moment that you are, and pause the video if you like. I'm sure everyone's going to pause the video. And just think about this question. How would you help a friend who is depressed? Probably not by giving them a prefrontal lobotomy. Probably not by giving them electroconvulsive therapy. What would you think would be a better option for what you would do? I mean, you probably also wouldn't want to like separate them off from the rest of society. You wouldn't just like, if your friend was really sad, you wouldn't be like, well, I'm going to leave you alone. I mean, maybe you would. I don't know. You probably would talk to them about it and try to listen to their problems, maybe, that's what I tend to do. I hope that's what your answer was, something like. So this gets us into the realm of psychotherapy that is not medical. This is where we get to the idea of talking to a therapist and using a variety of techniques to help a person to better understand what their issues are and to help them assert control over their own stuff. The kind you're probably already thinking of is one-on-one therapy with one patient and one therapist. There's also group therapy and self-help groups. We're not going to really focus on that. We're going to focus on the one-on-one stuff. And when we talk about one-on-one therapy, there's one person in particular who is, kind of given credit for being the person who invented this, and it's this guy. Again, it's Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud, his particular brand of therapy was called psychoanalysis and still used today. Now it tends to be called psychodynamic therapy. It's slightly different. It's evolved over the years. But this is where the therapist tries to make the patient aware of their unconscious mind, tries to bring things from the unconscious to the surface and show the patient or client, if you will, why they're doing the things that they're doing, what they're afraid of, what it is they want, and like really try to get at the source of these emotional problems, like what is causing the problem that the person is experiencing. Remember the iceberg? Of course you do. So Freud believed that a lot of times patients were repressing memories and feelings that they didn't want to experience. Negative feelings, negative memories were being repressed and buried in the unconscious. And, he saw the point of therapy as to bring these things up above the level of the water so that we could see them. he found that when he was conducting therapy with patients or clients, that a lot of them would demonstrate resistance. They would, when he would go to a particular topic that that was causing them pain, they would show that they didn't want to talk about it. They would try to change the subject. They would sort of answer the question, but not really answer it. And they called this resistance. And he recognized that when a client was showing resistance, when a client was continuously dodging particular topics of conversation, that this was a clue to him to, where he needed to explore and where the therapy should focus on. So one strategy that Freud developed was called free association, which is where the patient just says or writes anything that comes into their mind. This could be just this could be like I say a word and you say the first thing that pops into your head, like I say dog and you say cat or whatever it is. But it doesn't even have to be in response to anything the therapist says. A lot of times, if you go into a therapist's office today, the therapist will try not to steer the conversation and try to let the client or patient just speak about the things that they want to speak about and trust that, from that will come like the right focus. Like the patient's going to start talking about things and it'll become obvious where it is that the therapy needs to go based on what the patient is saying through their free association. Their unconscious mind is going to steer the conversation in the right place. Freud also believed that you could access the unconscious mind through dream analysis. Like here's the Easter I love this cartoon of the Easter Bunny. I'll let you read the caption. You can read it. So, the idea about dream analysis is that if we're trying to uncover what's going on in the unconscious mind, that dreams are what the unconscious is doing while you're asleep. And so if you analyze dreams, then you're going to get an understanding of what is happening in a person's unconscious mind. And then Freud also talked about something called transference, which is where a patient starts to treat the therapist like they're someone else. Like if I have issues with my dad and I'm really like angry at my dad for things that happened in my childhood, and I go to therapy and I start getting angry with my therapist and talking to my therapist like he's my father, I am transferring my feelings about my father onto the therapist. And that can be useful, Freud found, also in order to try to figure out what's going on with somebody's unconscious mind and help them tap into things that they have repressed. So please now on Canvas, go take the quiz that will ask you to show your understanding of these key terms. And there'll be a second video for you to watch on modern approaches to therapy. And then there'll be an application activity to do once you've done those first two parts. Thanks for watching.